welcome back to Teaching Through the Bible as we get prepared for God showing up on Mount Sinai, giving his commands, giving his words to his people. And so Exodus 20 is what everyone's so familiar with. Exodus 20 is don't murder, don't steal, don't lie, honor your father and mother, all those sorts of commands. But before that is so important to give us context and to, again, help us see more about who Jesus is. So in chapter 18, we have an issue where Moses, he is the judge. He is the ruler. He is the judge. People come to him, and he settles their disputes. Well, Moses' father-in-law, he shows up. Now, because remember, they've moved back towards where his father-in-law would have lived. His father-in-law would have lived to the east of Egypt, kind of in the more wilderness area, in the Midian area, and this is where they're going through. They're passing, maybe they haven't gone through that area. Perhaps his father-in-law actually is, moving along a coast or something where the water is, maybe more nomadic is likely a scenario that could be taking place. So he doesn't necessarily live in one, like a town where he's going to stay stationary, but whether he has come there to specifically see Moses, happened by, whatever the case is, he's there. He shows up in chapter 18. Jethro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard of all that God had done for Moses and for Israel, his people, how Yahweh had brought Israel out of Egypt. Now Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, had taken Zipporah, Moses' wife, after he had sent her home. So that would have happened sometime during all these plagues and stuff, along with her 2 sons. The name of the one was Gershom, for he said, I had been a sojourner in a foreign land. And the name of the other, Eleazar, for he said, the God of my father was my help, and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came with his sons and his wife to Moses in the wilderness, where he was encamped at the mountain of God. And when he sent word to Moses, I, your father-in-law Jethro, am coming to you with your wife and her 2 sons with me, Moses went out to meet his father-in-law and bowed down and kissed him, which was regular greeting at the time. And they asked each other of their welfare and went into the tent. And Jethro, essentially, he praises Yahweh for what Yahweh has done. And then he looks at what Moses is doing. He looks at how Moses, from dawn till dusk, he is just trying to settle disputes. He's giving judgments, and that can be good. It's good judgments, sure, but one person can't do all this, and Moses' father-in-law recognizes that. We need someone better than Moses who doesn't have to, divide up the job among others, because that's what Moses ends up doing. His father-in-law suggests, all right, you're going to have to get other guys, and they will divide it among them. They can deal with a lot of them, and the hard cases, the hard situations, they bring it to you, and then you can solve those ones and give a judgment on that. Jesus is so much better because he can be the ultimate judge and isn't bound by that time, isn't bound by getting tired out and exhausted and running out of time and having to divide it up among other people. He can do it all on his own. He is the great and perfect judge. The Moses, as great as he was, could not be. But when Moses does this, we see the wisdom here in how we have leaders, there's elders here that are all collectively, because one person can't do it, are collectively working to lead the people under the authority of Moses. Now, this here, there are some churches, this, by the way, is going to be one of their verses for why they have elders. There's verses in the New Testament that say really clearly you need to have elders and deacons in the church, and we'll get to that, several classes from now when we're in the New Testament. But here we have an Old Testament example of elders who are helping Moses lead. In the New Testament, we have elders who are to be the shepherds for Jesus. So Jesus is the one in charge, and these elders are under his authority, supposed to be taking care of the sheep. Here, Moses is in charge, and he has these elders that are under his authority that are taking care of the sheep. The sheep being God's people. And so here we have this kind of Old Testament example. That's pretty cool to see that, and seeing this continuity between the Old and the New Testament. So you've got that situation, chapter 18, which is showing God's care for justice. He has someone come and talk to Moses about the need to be able to divide this up so that everyone can get justice. God cares about this. Well, so then chapter 19 prepares the people. So you've got these guys who are going to be there to help distribute and understand the law and apply it properly. So before he gives all this law, God sets up the situation so that they are prepared to be able to explain it to people, are prepared to be able to judge it among the people. When there's two sides that disagree, you have all these people to go to help you deal with that dispute when you disagree about the law. And ultimately Moses, but he has these other people to help him as they get ready for this coming law. Then you have chapter 19 where God's saying, get ready, I'm about to come down to the mountain. So he's about to come down to the top of the mountain, kind of like how he came down to the Tower of Babylon, right? The Tower of Babylon is supposed to be this huge thing going high up to the sky, likely a ziggurat. If you want to look that up, that's what they look like. That's probably what Tower of Babylon was. But they're building it up high, and God's still coming down to them. Well, here there's Mount Sinai, really, really big, huge mountain, not a little rock, and God's coming down to that. So he's saying he's going to come down, so get ready. And how does he say to get ready? What are the stipulations? Well, we see here a few things. We see that we have Moses. He's going to be ready to get the law and send this to the people to explain it to them, but God will actually be speaking the first part of that, which is going to be amazing. He doesn't just have it written down to Moses. He speaks it to the people. But he is holy. We see that God is so holy because he has a boundary around the mountain. It says you can't come any closer than this to all of God's people. Now Moses can. Moses is that intermediary. He's the guy that comes between God and his people. He's the guy in the middle that relates from them to him and him to them. And so in that way pointing us again to Jesus. But no one else can go because they are not holy. They do not get this exception of Moses. They are not the mediator. So they have to make this boundary around the mountain. Don't come inside this boundary. Because God is so holy, so separate, so different than us, and so much, he's perfect, so much better than us. So he's holy, and so when we look at it says his voice and appearance, what's it do? It brings people terror. Now his appearance it's a theophany again. This is clouds of smoke and fire coming down to the mountain. So the top of the mountain has fire, it has smoke. That's all a theophany that's being a physical representation of God, though obviously it's not physically him because he's God. He doesn't have a physical body. So you have the fire and the smoke, though, and then when he speaks the Ten Commandments, as we call them. And when he speaks, it terrifies people. And so they understand that he is special, he's beyond them, he's holy, he deserves this respect and honor. And so that is true of God. But at the same time, what did God provide for them? He provided for them someone who can be a go-between. He provided for them someone who could go up to the mountain, who could go get it written down, these 10 words, the 10 Commandments, and receive the rest of all these commands that they're about to get and come back to them with these commands and be their representative to God. He doesn't leave them hanging, say, hey, you can't come near me, the end. He gives them someone who does go to them. He gives them someone who is with them, who is, in their midst, which is exactly what he does when Jesus comes. God the Son, Jesus, he comes, God himself, as the mediator, as the guy in the middle who comes to be with his people. And here, though, we have it as Moses. So he's the holy God, but he's also the one who is with us. And he does both of those things. And then we see in chapter 19, verse 6, something else we notice about this relationship. And you shall be to me a kingdom of priests. So he's talking to God's people here. God's talking to his people. You shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the people of Israel. So he's speaking directly to Moses, but this is a message for the whole nation. All of you are a kingdom of priests. They don't have the Levitical priests yet. They will get to that. They'll really inaugurate that in the next book of the Bible, Leviticus. But right here, he's saying there's a sense in which all of them are priests because they're all supposed to be representing God to the nations. So Moses came and called the elders of the people and set before them all these words that Yahweh had commanded him. Now all the people answered together and said, all that Yahweh has spoken we will do. And so they're supposed to be priests. Later on we see this consecration is what it's called. So when they're being set apart, they're making sure that they are holy rather than defiled. So verse 14, so Moses went down from the mountain to the people and consecrated the people, and they washed their garments. And he said to the people, be ready for the third day, do not go near a woman. That doesn't mean physically don't be standing next to one, like if you're a husband, don't stand next to your wife. It means it's a euphemism. Not going near the woman is being near her in a marital sort of way. And that we see more about that in Leviticus as far as cleanness and uncleanness. And so here it's saying you got to be clean, you got to be prepared. And clean doesn't mean just physically clean, but it's more than that. Being clean is talking about a ritual sort of purity, a ritual cleanness. And so he's saying all of them have to be. So when we get to Leviticus, we'll see that the priests have to be. But in this case, all of them do, because at this point he's calling them all, calling them what? A kingdom of priests. We see this again in 1 Peter. Actually, the Apostle Peter talks of the church as a kingdom of priests. Another way that we're seeing this connection between God's people in the Old and New Testaments. In both cases, we're called a kingdom of priests. That means that we are representing God to the world. Just as the Levitical priests that we'll see later on in Leviticus, the next book of the Bible, they are representing God to the people and vice versa. They are the ones that are a mediator, a go-between for God's people and God. And that's what these people are supposed to be. They're supposed to be this in-between for God and other people. And so that's where right now, chapter 18 and 19, God has set up this situation, this group of people, so that they're going to be able to explain and interpret the law and make judgments. You've got this clear understanding that God is holy and don't mess with him, but also that God is with us and cares and has this connection with his people. So in the light of all of that, then we get to what we call the Ten Commandments. And furthermore, other laws that kind of build off of that as well. So that's where we'll go next time. We are going to look through the Ten Commandments and all these coming laws after that. But in order to kind of spread out the laws, we're going to talk about the rest of the laws next. And the Ten Commandments, I would encourage you to read through them. But basically, those we will look more at in Deuteronomy. because it comes again in Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy chapter 5, we have the Ten Commandments. So in Deuteronomy, we will go in depth to the actual Ten Commandments. But for now, you can just look at the Ten Commandments, and we will talk kind of generally, but we're going to move on to the next section later on in chapter 20 and look at the things that come after the Ten Commandments. And we will address them, but like I said, it's here and it's in Deuteronomy 5, so I will make sure it is covered. We're not going to skip over it. So we'll see you next time talking about God's laws that He's prepared His people to receive. Thank you for watching that video. I hope that it helped you learn a little bit more about the Bible today. And if you'd like to continue to learn more about the Bible, then we have plenty of other videos on the channel. And if this has been helpful for you, then you can always let me know by subscribing to the channel. And hopefully I'll be able to continue to help you learn even more about God's Word. Thanks.